Welcome to the Murray End. My name's Mark Machado. I'm joined today by Nick Brooks and our very special guest, Aadhil Siddhique. We are gathered here today to pay our final respects to SSC, who have been relegated from the top division of Sri Lankan domestic cricket, which is why I've had to draft in Aadhil. I should do that. Anyway, thank you for joining us. Please get in touch with us. Leave us your comments, leave us your follows, subscribe, like, tell your friends and family about us. If I was organized, I would have stuck this banner up already. There you go, scrolling down the bottom. I think we're meant to say that we're on a quest to try and get to kind of 2,600 subscribers, but realistically we want like 100,000. I want one of those big plaques. So that's what we're going to keep doing here at Murray, and just keep plugging away, talking about Sri Lankan cricket, hoping for some more brown washers like we saw last week. Sri Lanka's 2-0 ODI win against Australia. You know, I know there's a lot of criticisms about the team that Australia sent, but what could you do? We can only beat the team in front of us. Anyway, let's jump straight into it. We're going to do questions at the end. We're going to talk about the women's squad. We'll talk a little bit about the Australian chucker, but we're going to start off in the domestic situation. Aadhil, SSC got relegated. What's going on? Why? Firstly, I think you need to explain to people why this is such a big deal and why SSC are such a big club.
It is a big deal. It is a big deal. So SSC is one of the very first clubs in Sri Lanka. So I think CCC, SSC, NCC, Tamil Union. So those are. I think Nick, you know the history better than anyone else in this show. But I'm pretty sure SSC is one of those starting clubs in Sri Lanka. And talking about how big their relegation is, if you just take a look at, forget about the history, forget about them being one of the first clubs and all, and forget about the facilities they have. Like, they are definitely one of Sri Lanka's best clubs in terms of facilities for players. I mean, they are a test venue and state-of-the-art training facilities for all players. Just take a look at their squad, and they can just stack up 11 if players are available with all national players. They easily have around 10 to 15 national players, national cap players within their squad. So that's the biggest deal. I mean, imagine having all the national players in your squad and still getting relegated. That's what makes this so much of a big deal. And next year, since they won't be part of the Premier tournament, what are these players going to do? Like, they won't be part of this Premier first class tournament. That's the big deal. And if it was any other club, as soon as they get relegated, all the top tier players, the national players and the fringe players or under 90 players, they'll move to the other clubs who remained in the top division. But as far as I know, SSC, their contracts with players has a clause that if in case the club gets relegated while you were playing that season, you have to play in the lower division and get the club back to the top division and then leave if you want. I mean, I'm not entirely sure, but that thing is making the rounds, and I'm pretty sure there is something along those lines, making the players not to move out of SSC. So that's the biggest deal now. Players like Charita Salanka, Dimut Karnaratna, of course, retired. Prabhat Jayasuriya, Dasun Chanaka, let's forget Dasun Chanaka also. Chamundi Vikramasinghe, Nuwanidhu Fernando, Nipun Dhananjaya, Lakshita Manasinghe, Kasun Rajita, Pramod Madushan, and some under 19 players like Nimnaga Jayatilaka, Akmal Fazli. Like, I can keep on saying a lot of names. Imagine a first class tournament with these players. I mean, that's the biggest deal. Nothing else.
Well, we might have to stop.
Sorry?
We might have to stop imagining a first class tournament without these players, right? That seems like the issue.
Yeah, exactly.
Aadhil, let's just go to Nick for the moment now, just to get a little bit, of the kind of history behind it. You touched on it there. Nick, this is one of our founding cricket clubs, right?
Man, it's a huge cricket club. I think ever since the Elder Serum smashed a century for the SSC in their first game way back in, I think it was 1907, they have been the bedrock, the heart of Sri Lanka cricket. I mean, it's so big that SLC's offices are at the SSC, right? It's the Lords of Sri Lanka. If you go back and have a look at the Premier League trophy champions, you know, the SSC have won this tournament way more than anyone else. I think they've won 15, 16 times. In the 60s and 70s, they were literally winning it every year. So this is wild. I've got a few, I guess, things to say, questions really for Aadhil more than anything else. So, I mean, the first of which is that, like, should we be considering this as a good thing for Sri Lankan cricket? Is this a sign that the new reformed Premier League, Major League tournament structure is working? Because SSC didn't actually lose a lot of games. They lost 1 and drew 5. So, I mean, really, the issue has been an inability to get results. And the second question, Aadhil, that I have for you is, what does Div 2 cricket look like at the moment? Because I was Googling that and I couldn't find anything about Div 2 online. The last time I heard of it was I think still the Donovan Andre. I don't think that exists anymore.
No.
Is it essentially like semi-pro cricket?
Yeah. So I'll first answer your second question. So currently the structure is that only the major club league tournament, which is the tier A1, has first class status. The second tier is called tier B, which started just a few years ago once Aravind De Silva's technical advisory committee proposed this system. So in that tier, currently we have Army Sports Club, Lankan, I mean, the clubs who got relegated recently, some of those clubs, and some of the clubs who got promoted from Governor's Trophy. So Donovan and Ree is after Governor's Trophy, which is effectively like the 4th tier. So we have the tier A, which is the first class tournament, and then tier B, where Army Sports Club and all these teams play. So SSC will be playing in that tournament from the next season. And the best part is this tournament doesn't have first class status, and they have halted promotions from this tournament and for 2 more seasons, and I'll tell you why that is. So doesn't matter how good you do in this tournament, you will never earn promotions at least for 2 more years. They'll resume promotions for this tournament after probably 2 years or something, but for now there is no promotions. There is only demotions from here. Like if you perform badly in this tournament, you could get demoted, but you cannot be promoted at least for 2 more years. And then the third division is the Governor's Trophy. It is also called as the PSARA tournament, and it is just a 50 over tournament if I'm not mistaken. So that is the semi-professional category, I would say. Tier B, most of the players are professional cricketers, but they don't have, those games don't have first class status. Most of the discards from the premier clubs, young players like school players. So those are the players who play in this tier B category, where SSC will also be competing. Now I'll come to the say why the promotions are halted. So this, I'll have to give a bit of context. So in 2021 or 2020, when Aravind De Silva and this team proposed this structure, what they did was they combined tier A and tier B. At that time, tier B also had first class status. So what they did was they combined tier A and tier B, made it a 26 club first class structure, and then they kept relegating 4 teams every year. So by the 2024-25 season, it came down to 18 teams in the first class structure, and they only kept relegating teams. So there was no promotion from the bottom tiers. So that's why tier B doesn't have promotions since 2021, and they won't get promotions until I think 2 more years, because they changed their initial plan. The initial plan was to bring it down to 15 teams by 2025 or 2024, and then resume promotions and relegations. But early this year, or I think in 2024, it's 2025, right? In 2024, they decided to bring it down further to 12 teams. Hence, this season they'll be demoting 4 teams. But the initial plan was to just demote 3 teams. So in the middle, they changed the decision. I mean, before the tournament started, of course. Now they are relegating 4 more teams, and the next season it would be just 14 teams in the first class structure, first class tournament. And next season also they'll be relegating 2 more teams. Hence the blocking of promotions from Tier B. So once they brought it down to 12 teams, probably they will resume promotions from Tier B, and that's when SSC will get their chance to get promoted back to first class cricket. And the next thing is, as I said, SSC are not prepared to like send their players to other clubs because of a clause in their contract, which I'm not sure, but I'm hearing it from so many people. So could be something, because a fire won't come without a smoke. I mean, smoke won't come without a fire, right? So there's something in it. And the best part is, okay, so when this structure was announced in 2021, one senior sports journalist of Sri Lanka said that they will continue this structure only until one of the big clubs face relegation. And now this is the time. This is where Sri Lanka cricket will be tested, if they are actually like willing to take forward this structure. Because in the past, I've not seen that, but the same sports senior journalist said in the past also they have planned to prune the number of clubs, and when one of these big clubs, I won't say the name, got relegated, they just changed the rule and accommodated that club to remain in the top tier. Now is such a scenario altogether once again, and this is where we'll have to wait and see what Sri Lanka cricket will do. Will they stick to their rules and relegate SSC and continue the plan as planned, or will they change it just to accommodate? I mean, SSC is huge club, like Nick said. I mean, I personally feel they should still be in the Premier, because I feel we should have clubs with Premier facilities playing first class cricket. But that's not relevant here actually. They didn't perform well. They ended up in the bottom of the table. They deserve to be relegated. That's a different story. But so these are the things that we need to wait and see. And answering your first question, is this a good thing? I think it is a good thing, because these players definitely, I mean, Sri Lanka cricket as a whole can't afford to let these players not play in the first class tournament. I mean, that's a joke, right? I mean, you won't find any, I mean, you're just leaving your best players. So if they are to amend the SSC contract or do something on it and let this player continue to play first class cricket next year also, or at least until SSC gets back to the Premier tournament as a loan or something like that, some arrangement, we would see this what do you call this strong, this big whatever SSC had with them, right? So they had a huge say, like a huge dominance in Sri Lanka first class cricket with almost all the best national players. These players will go away from SSC and they'll join different clubs. And that's something I'm really waiting to see, because I want these I mean, not just me, most of the Sri Lanka cricket fans want all these clubs to be equally competitive in the club circuit. I mean, yes, it's happening because, poor performing clubs are getting relegated season by season, but still the best players are with SSC, NCC, CCC, Tamil Union. I want these players to go, I mean, and make every club equally competitive. And that's the good thing that I am seeing. But apart from that, SSC getting relegated as a whole is not a good thing. But we'll have to take it, because if you set a rule, you'll have to follow it. But we'll have to wait and see what Sri Lanka cricket will do. So interesting times ahead again in Sri Lanka cricket, as usual. Nothing new.
If you're listening to this as a podcast, that is the voice of Aadhil Siddhique. He is the sage of Sri Lankan domestic cricket. He knows everything about it. He's also got a great channel called Cricket Sticks SL. That's right, isn't it, Aadhil?
That's it.
So if you want to know more about this topic, if you want to find out everything that's going on in the domestic scene, if you want to know who our future stars in the red ball and white ball are going to be, then give Aadhil a follow across social media and kind of stay on top of it. Because as you can hear, not only is he knowledgeable, but he's passionate. about it as well. I like that you've kind of thought about every single permutation. You like the Doctor Strange of of domestic cricket here, Aadhil. The question I do have is, we talked about how fantastic their squad is, how packed it is with superstars, and so essentially, how has this been allowed to happen? Because I don't think any of us are sitting here thinking that Red Bull squad or you know that Sri Lanka play. We all know there is players that are pushed to get into it, but we think by and large that is a decent squad that has been assembled. So why have SSC managed to draw so many games and get themselves in a situation where they've got relegated?
Yep. So I'll just quickly walk you through SSC's season. I mean, so far, as in they're done with all their games. So their season. So they started off with a shocking defeat against Kurunegala Youth Cricket Club. If you just take a look at Kurunegala's lineup, there's a not there. I mean, okay, I'll just read out the 11. Not much of big superstars or much known players. So I'll just read out the 11. Dayan Manishan, Dilharpur Gampala, Gayana Veerasinghe, Ravindra Karunaratne, Lakshan Edrisinghe, Samira Sandamal, Dinush Kumalan, Randhir Ranasinghe, Aravinda Premaratne, Lairu Jayaratne, Kavika Dilshan. Have you guys heard any of these names?
No, I didn't know a single name.
In Lairu Jayaratne. Just a set of unknowns. They beat SSC in the very first game, very first match week of the tournament. That was the beginning of this. And SSC in that game. So they had Shevon Daniel, Dimut Karunaratne, Krishant Sanjul, Sri Lanka 18 player, Ranadu Somaratne, Sri Lanka under 19 player, Dasun Shanaka, Manoj Sarachandra 18 player, Lakshita Manasinghe almost made his test debut, Kamidun Adishan had a great LPL, Prabhacharya Surya, Kasim Rajitha, and Akmal Fazli, one of the superstars of under 19 cricket. So, I mean, this is what happened. Like, on paper, you would never expect SSC to lose to Kurunegala. And then they drew against Nugegoda. Even that was the first innings defeat. No result against Candy Custom CC. No result against CCC. Lost against BRC. So that was mostly thanks to Malinda Pushpakumara's efforts. So he's like a Sri Lanka domestic legend. There is no Sri Lanka domestic tournament without Malinda Pushpakumara featuring in the top 5 wicket takers list. Literally no, since his debut. So he is such a, successful bowler in Sri Lanka domestic cricket. And also Roshan Silva scored 100 in that for BRC against his former team. Movin Subasinghe scored a 50-ball 100. So that game, the SSC lost. And they drew against Moa SSC, still again a first innings defeat. So Moa SSC is a good lineup. They're captained by Ramesh Mendes, and they have quite a few good players. Pasindu Surya Bandar plays for Moas. And the best game for them in this tournament, in this season, was against Tamil Union, in which Charit Tasalanka did a Garfield Sobers. He picked up 10 wickets, 6 and 4, and scored 100 as well. Shevon Daniel scored 100, Nonitha Fernandez scored 100. So that was like out of pressure they had to perform, and they beat Tamil Union. And then finally, when they were in a dire situation where they had to beat NCC. So NCC has been the best team in this tournament so far. They kind of play a very enterprising brand of cricket. Niroshan Dikwal, Lairudar opens the batting. They just, play their own brand of baseball. Then Kamil Mishara, Ahan Sanchita, all of them just, they go hard at the bowlers. And NCC also beat SSC on first innings. So if you just take a look, I don't know how to explain how that team lost. But also, I mean, most of their players were involved in ILT20, Sri Lanka tests against Australia. But still, even without them, they have a better team. They had a better team on paper when you compare with some of the oppositions that they played against. Best example, the Kurunegala game. I mean, you guys follow so much of Sri Lanka cricket, had not heard any of those names from the Kurunegala 11, right? So that just sums up SSC's season.
Wow. Let's I want to continue talking about domestic cricket, guys, but I want to kind of move away from the SSC situation, because what it means they're being relegated is that other teams like the Kurunagala team we talked about, like the other teams, this team from Nukaguda are obviously doing something right. What are the other teams doing that's right? And where is it leaving our domestic structure at the moment?
I mean, I honestly don't know to answer that question because I'm at the end of the day, I'm also just following the scorecards. I'm not with the players or watching the games. But what I think they're doing right is they at least play a set 11 because they don't have a lot of players pick from. They just have a set squad and they just continue to play the same 11 or with just few changes because if you take their best 11, they'll be available throughout the season. But for SSC, I mean, I don't think this is something they should complain about, but probably that could be a reason as well because if you take their best 11 won't be available throughout the season. Let's take Charita Salanki. He had to play in the ILT20. They brought him back, him and Avishka Fernando and Dasun Chanaka, because they had to win the remaining whatever number of games. Dimut Karnaratna had to play for Sri Lanka. Prabhat Jayasuri had tests. I think Shevon Daniel played all games. Nunindu Fernando was part of the Sri Lanka squad, ODI squad, but he got special permission to play that last game. Dasun Chanaka was with the Dubai Capital squad. Chamindu Wickramasinghe, I think, pulled up an injury towards the latter part of the tournament. And without, when Prabhat Jayasuriya was off, they didn't have like a proper spinner to rely on. They had Nimnaka Jayatilaka, who is very young, played for Sri Lanka under 19, but not in the caliber of someone like a Malinda Pushpakumar or let's say Dilum Sudhira, who is doing wonders for Police SC, or a Tarindu Ratnayaka, who keeps on picking up wickets for Tamil Union, or let's say like someone like Ramesh Mendis, even though he was called up for the Sri Lanka test squad towards the latter part. Probably that played a part, and you know how much spin plays a part in Sri Lanka domestic cricket. Yes, they have Sri Lanka's best spinner, but he was not available, Prabhat Jayasuriya. And even if you look at Prabhat Jayasuriya's domestic numbers, you won't think he's Sri Lanka's best test spinner. I'll just quickly take you through the stats of this tournament. I mean, yes, Prabhat Jayasuriya didn't play a lot of games, but I'll just quickly. Okay, so Prabhat Jayasuriya, 5 games, 8 innings, 11 wickets. That's all he has done in this tournament for SSC. But he is Sri Lanka's best test spinner. Whereas you take the leading wicket take of the tournament so far, Dilum Sudhira, 14 innings, 61 wickets. So I think that number, that stat says a story as well.
This like leads me on very nicely to my next question, which is when you look at our test team, there is quite obviously in the next few months, years, 18 months, a lot of spots about to open up. I mean, who are the players? And we talked about this a lot the last few weeks, Nick, but who are the players that we should be looking at in terms of coming into the Red Bull team who have kind of put their hands up from this most recent edition of the league?
Yeah, so if I'm to talk about batters, I think from a bowling point of view, fast bowlers are pretty much sorted, and you won't see a lot of fast bowlers performing or taking a lot of wickets in Sri Lanka domestic cricket. Spinners, Prabhat Jayasuriya is there, Ramesh Mendis, Nishan Pires. They are pretty much there. Like Dilum Sudhir is there, Vanuja Sahan, not having a great season in this season, but he has been doing well so far in almost all domestic cricket. So I'll just talk about batting. So the highest run scorer in this tournament so far, it was Prasinda Surya Bandara before the end of this week, but now Lahir Udara has taken over. So Lahir Udara, Prasinda Surya Bandara are leading the chart definitely. Lahir Udara was definitely part of the squad as well. Prasinda Surya Bandara is eyeing that number 4 spot, I guess. I think so. It's just a matter of time. Matthews announces his retirement. I think Prasinda Surya Bandara will be a huge candidate for that spot. Sahan Kosala is at number 3. He played the NSL as well last year, but hasn't been like a hasn't been performing very consistently. But this season, he is having a great season. 611 runs in 12 innings with an average of 55.54. So I think they'll want him to perform with similar numbers in another season or two as well before probably considering him for national call-ups. But Pasin Suryabandar and Lairudar are definitely up there. And this time, so we are seeing like a late bloomer performing. Roshan Vijayanayaka is 36 years of age, plays for Nugegoda, and in his last 4 innings, he scored 400s. So he was not even in the top 5 list, even in my latest episode in my channel. He was not even in the top 5 list, but now he's the 4th highest run scorer of the season so far. And he has scored 400s, and all 400s came in his most recent 4 innings, including a double 100. So that's like crazy from his point. But I don't think he's competing for a national spot given his age and all. And then Kamil Mishara, hope you remember him. He's back amongst runs, 5th in the list. Dhananjay Lakshan is quietly, stacking up some runs. Not much wickets this season, but he's scoring good runs, including 200s. And Lasit Kruzpulle is among the top run scorer. And then our good friend Niroshan Dikbel just keeps on piling up the runs in domestic cricket. So yeah, if you just by looking at the top run scorers list, I think it's definitely passing to Suryabandar. If you're asking me about a player who would make the Sri Lanka squad, Lairudar is already in the squad, but passing to Suryabandar, it's just a matter of time.
What can you tell us? What can you tell us about his style of batting? Like, because most people watching or listening to this won't have seen him bat. What can you tell us about his play?
Yes, I mean, I'm a big fan of him. So, Pasindu Suryabandar, I'll not talk much about his technique and all. He's okay from technique wise. He's a very technically sound player who likes to take time. He'll work the singles and he'll play the long innings. But what's special about him is he is the Dunit Vellalage type of player who is gutsy, who will never give up. So I'll tell you a story. 2019 Royal Tomian big match. St. Thomas's won after so many years. Reclaim the shield.
Look at the smile on Nick's face when you said St. Thomas's won.
So this was Pasindu Suryabandara's last year playing for school, and he also holds the record for most first 11 runs for Royal College, and that's no mean feat. Like Royal College is one of the oldest schools to play cricket in Sri Lanka, and Pasindu Suryabandara, out of all the players, not Ranjan Madhugal, not Banu Rajapaksa, Royal College has produced so many cricketers, and it's Pasindu Suryabandara who holds that record. So that's a big feather on his hat. Yeah. So in this game, so they were losing, and they were, I think, 5 or 6, some wickets down. And Pasindu Suryabandara had a dislocated shoulder while fielding in the first innings. So everyone thought he won't come to bat, and Royal College would be all out. We'll just only bat with 10 men. But he turned up and scored an unbeaten 60-odd runs. That's the type of player Pasindu Suryabandara is. So he'll just score those hard runs for you, face those difficult overs for you, and his fielding, my goodness, one of the best fielders in Sri Lanka. It's just a matter of time he plays in front of the television for more number of games so that people see and identify how good a fielder he is. Yeah. So that's Pasindu Suryabandar, and he is leading Sri Lanka A team as well. So he's got a good head on his shoulders.
Wow, I think we're all excited to hear to see him in Sri Lanka team colours very soon, aren't we, Nick?
Yeah, and I remember that innings Aadhil was talking about. I actually hadn't put together that it was Pasindu who played it, but it was a gutsy innings. And I mean, St. Thomas's were right on top of that game from day one. But I remember when that he built a good partnership with someone else. And I remember during that partnership, there just started to be some nerves that they weren't going to get over the line and that they might cling on for a draw. So yeah, I mean, I've been seeing his scores. And, you know, it seems like he's another one of off the production line, a player who looks destined to make his Test debut sooner rather than later. So I look forward to getting another look at him.
The kind of, I want to say the problem, but I'm not sure it really is a problem. I think it's the perceived problem in Sri Lankan cricket when you hear particularly kind of the older generation talk about our cricket, is that there seems to be a gap, or there's a feeling that there's a gap between the level of cricket played in schools and then the level of cricket that's played in domestically, and that when the players are leaving their schools, we think, right, these guys can go in and score thousands of test runs or thousands of white ball runs, and then actually by the time they get to the Sri Lanka side, it feels like they're undercooked. Do we think that's fair? Because actually, I think that's a problem that every country in the world has, where, you know, under 19 players come through and they go, right, these players are the next ones off the next car off the cab rank kind of thing. But or do we think that actually the domestic system isn't equipping players well enough to play international cricket? Nick, I'll let you go first on this, and then we'll get Aadhil's thoughts.
I think that has been the popular conception, right? That players come to Test cricket and have to learn on the job. But I think part of that is down to how bloated the first-class structure had gotten. As Aadhil touched on not long ago, it was 28 teams in that top division split into two tiers. 26. So, but I think that you're starting to see, well, like when a team this good, I know we've talked about the fact they haven't been able to call upon a lot of their squad throughout this tournament, but when a team with players of this standard is failing to win week after week, it certainly suggests to me that the standard is improving with this concentration that's gone on in first-class cricket, and that we're getting a better, more competitive first-class structure. And I think you've seen that with exceptional players, but nonetheless players who've been grown up through this system. Someone like Kamindu Mendis coming into Test cricket and looking instantly comfortable and at home, to me suggests that the standard of first-class cricket in Sri Lanka is improving, and that gap, which we've assumed to be a chasm, is possibly narrowing slightly.
I know, what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I would agree with Nick, because yes, probably 4 or 5 years ago, I would have said, I mean, yes, the standards are like so big, but I mean the gap is so big. But yes, I mean it's improving, but still a long way to go. Definitely a long way to go. Kamindu Mendis, in that case, I would say is an exception. Like, my goodness, that start is just mind blowing. But I don't think you could expect. This is something I was speaking with one of my friends very recently. Now, yes, what Kamindu Mendis did was exceptional, like special. And what a mistake that we shouldn't do is to expect the same level of performance from a new debutant. Let's say if Sonal Dinusha makes his debut in the next series, we shouldn't expect the same level of consistency from Sonal Dinusha. Or maybe let's say Pawan Ratnayak or Pasindu Surya Bandara. It's very, very, very unfair. What Kamindu Mendis did is exceptional. Don't expect that again. So the gap is still the gap is still considerably. There is a gap. I mean, we can't expect a youngster, or even let's say for someone like a Lahiru Udara, who is a seasoned campaigner in Sri Lanka domestic cricket. He has played so much of games, but we can. I don't think it's fair to expect him to just come to the national team and start performing. The gap is still there, but like Nick said, it's coming closer, and it's improving.
We'll get to this comment from Dennis in a moment, but the only I'm glad you brought this up, Aadhil, because I think there is an expectation that people arrive in the team, they make their debut, and they're fully formed, right? Like, you when Sangha retires, kind of the expectation I felt from a lot of people was whoever comes in and fills this place is going to be kind of Sangha reborn, and it's like it's never going to work like that, sadly. Dineth has written in and he said, I believe Kaminda and Pathum averaged slightly sub 60 in first class cricket, and this has explained their success in test early in their careers. I mean, Adil, what like you talked about Kamindu there? Can you talk a little bit about kind of Pathum as well, and what their kind of first class careers look like before they were kind of fixtures in the team? I remember, I think Pathum made a century and debut, didn't he? Against West Indies.
Yes, in West Indies, right?
Yeah,
he
away from home as well.
People were wanting to see him in the test team for a long time before he got there. Right? And Pasindu is another guy who's averaging not far off 60. Am I wrong, Adil?
Who?
Pasindu is another guy who's averaging high.
Exactly.
50.
While you were just talking, I just checked his current first class average, and it's 57.67. He almost 60. So yeah, Pathum, before he made his test debut, like he was scoring in every domestic game that he got. Like Dineth had said, he was averaging some 60 or something. Yes, so Pathum, Hamidu, even Nishan Madhushkar was performing exceptionally well before he made his debut for Sri Lanka. So yes, I think scoring heavily, not just barely scoring 100 then once in a while, but scoring very heavily definitely gives you the confidence to succeed in the international level. So I think that's what we saw with Pathum, Kamindu, and Nishan for a certain extent. And also, if you all remember, Osha the Fernando, right? So he was like not a big name, but out of the blues, because Sri Lanka had a bad tour in Australia, they did a big overhaul to the test squad, and people like so these were like heavy run scorers in domestic cricket. Osha the Fernando, Angelo Pereira, Milinda Sirivardhana. Three batters got call-ups for the test series. So all these three were scoring so heavily in domestic cricket. Angelo Pereira, I remember in one game scored 2 double centuries or something like that. Like they were scoring heavily. Milinda Sirivardhana was scoring heavily. I don't think he deserved the test squad place in the test squad, but that's a different story. But he was scoring heavily in domestic cricket. Osha the Fernando had scored 1,000 in 2 back-to-back domestic seasons. That's how he earned his place in the test squad. And you saw how well he handled the likes of Dale Steyn and Kagiso Rabada in South Africa, right? I mean, he just started his international career like a duck to water. Like he scored a match-winning 50 in the second test and all. But yes, there was a decline after that. But what I want to say is that maybe big runs behind your name will always help you play in any level, despite from which level you are coming in. I think that's what Dineth is also trying to say. But the standards are still far apart. But if you have a lot of runs behind your name, I think that would definitely help you have a good start. But sustaining is a different story, I think.
Guys, should we move on a bit? Because we've talked for nearly 40 minutes about Sri Lanka domestic cricket. As I say, if you want to know more about it, follow Aadhil's channel. Aadhil, do you want to tell us a little bit more about your channel and when you broadcast? Because you do lives like we do as well, right?
Yeah. So this is something I started in 2021, I guess. So it's just covering Sri Lanka domestic cricket only, nothing else. Men's domestic cricket, unfortunately, I have not yet started covering women's domestic cricket. For now, it's just men's domestic cricket. And every tournament since the 2020-2021 season are covered and prepared playlists. So even if I don't get the time to do videos myself, I find appropriate videos from different channels, Sri Lanka Cricket, the Papare, Murali, and these channels, appropriate videos, and I make the playlist, put together the playlist, and make sure all tournaments are covered. So that's something I do very passionately as a hobby. So if you want to follow Sri Lanka domestic cricket, just subscribe the channel, and I'll make sure you are kept updated.
Good man. I'll put a link for the channel in the comment section as well. If you've got any questions about it, do drop us a message. Right, Sri Lanka women are going to go off to New Zealand imminently. and they have announced their squad. They've got ODI games, and they've got T20 games. There is, of course, an ODI World Cup in a few months' time. This is the squad list that came out. Charmri is captain. All the kind of usuals: Vishmi, Hashta, Kavisha, Nalakshi, Anushka are there, and there is a few new players have come in from the under-19s as well, which is good to see, including the captain Manoudi. Guys, let's get your kind of thoughts on this. Nick, the under-19 girls, they had a really good tournament at the most recent World Cup. Sadly, the kind of draw and weather conspired against them, so they didn't get out of the group. But they did themselves proud, and a few of the girls have been promoted to the senior squad, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Manoudi and Rashmika both promoted to the senior squad, both batting all-rounders who bowl some seam up. So, I mean, I think that suggests that they're expecting green wickets in New Zealand and that they wanted to prioritize seam bowling. But I think it's also a reflection of the fact that Sri Lanka is still kind of looking for players beyond that heavy hitting top three, right? Who got girls who can come in below those three batters and score consistent runs. And we hope that Manoudi and Rashmika are those players. I guess the big headline for me was Inoka Ranawira's exclusion. She is now 39, so possibly the end of the road for her. I think I was wondering whether, we might have seen Chamadi Praboda, who was kind of the star of the Under-19 World Cup. She took a bag full of wickets. She is a left-arm spinner like Inoka, so that would have been a like-for-like replacement. But neither she nor Shashini Gimhani are in the squad, which I guess, again, suggests that horses for courses approach, preference for some seam bowling options in New Zealand.
Yeah, Aadhil, the kind of women's team has come on leaps and bounds, and now it looks like we're starting to get to a position now where it feels the selectors have a pool of people to select from, opposed to send me 12 women who we think could play at this kind of standard.
Yep. So, I mean, this squad is, I think, a pleasant surprise. After some time, we are seeing this many changes to the Sri Lanka women's team. Like Nick said, Inoka Ranawira doesn't find a place. I think even Shashini Gimhani has lost her place, probably due to the conditions that we will probably face in New Zealand. And
she might have school as well, right? She's only like 15. how much school could she miss? She just spent 2 weeks in Malaysia.
Yeah, probably. I mean, maybe some exams or something. I don't know. But so Shashini Gimani is not in the squad, and Hasini Pereira has been left out. I think they kind of backed her for a long time. She started as an opener, was given a chance in the middle order, but they finally decided to move on from her, and they brought in Manudi Nanakara. I think probably Manudi is the like for like replacement brought in there instead of Hasini Pereira. And I'm just trying to remind, there was another fast bowler assisting Achini Kulasurya and Udeshika Prabodhini, a young fast bowler. What her name? I think she has been left out as well. That's a bit of a surprise for me, unless she is injured. So they brought in.
Was it?
Yes, Amar Kanchana is another fast bowler. So Amar Kanchana is left out, and a young fast bowler. Instead of them, they've brought in Chetana Vimukti and Rashmika Servandi. So Chetana is not from the under-19 setup, probably due to her domestic performances. She's earned a place. And Rashmika Servandi, like Nick said, Sri Lanka under-19. Yeah, so, and I was also talking to some a journalist who worked with Sri Lanka Rupavahini Corporation, where they covered cricketers from out of Colombo, like this, the outstation parts of Sri Lanka. And something that he said to me was, Sri Lanka women's cricket looks like is in safe hands, because the outstations are producing a lot of quality women's cricketers. Unlike the men's game, where it's mostly coming, I mean, most of the players are coming from, Colombo, Kandy, and Galle, and a bit from Kurunegala, places like that. the women's game, for the women's cricketers are coming from all corners of the country. I mean, east, north, all parts of the country, without any specialization or without any particular pattern or anything. So I think that's a great thing, because there was a time, I think, Sri Lanka women. I mean, there weren't enough players for the Sri Lanka women's team to pick from. But now, since they are coming from all parts of the country, there is some healthy competition going on, and I think the Sri Lanka women's domestic setup will also needs to be a bit more, stronger, so that they get to play more cricket before they get a call up for the women. I mean, national team. So that's some good news, definitely, like Mark you said.
It does look like they are doing a lot of, or it seems to me, and I could be totally wrong. Because, look, I'm not on the ground. I'm not following it as close as I should be following it, but it does seem to me like I do see them have initiatives around the country, almost specifically for women's cricket. I know that the way that is funded can be slightly different because there's a lot of charities and look, I know Elon and the president aren't maybe overly keen on funding cricket initiatives for young women and girls in Sri Lanka at the moment, but there are other people in the world who seem to be pumping money into it, and we seem to be bearing the fruits of it as well. We should also mention the Foundation of Goodness, because I think like about a third of any Sri Lanka women's squad seems to have come through their pathways, which is absolutely incredible. Incredible work. I mean, they must be one of the biggest producers of international cricketers of both genders in the world at the moment. It's quite something, the work that they've done, and it's quite good to be able to track it over a number of years and see that they are obviously doing quite good work in the region. I think we need to talk a little bit about Chamri, because we got a lot of questions about this, because she is in India with the UP Warriors to play the WPL. She played.
Before that, yeah. Mark,
go on, Aadhil.
Yeah, because I remember I said I forgot a name from Sri Lanka women's team, a young fast bowler who featured in the recent tours, who has missed out for this tour, is Kavya Kavindi. So Kavya Kavindi, Amar Kanchana, both of them have missed out. So I just checked her name, and quite surprising. Probably Kavya Kavindi, because she's young and she had a smooth action as well. But they brought in two new names, Rashmika and Chetana. Yeah, brilliant. Back to you, Mark.
So I was going to talk about Chamri, right? Because she is playing the WPL. She's signed up to play for the UP Warriors. She's there at the moment, according to her socials. She didn't play in their game yesterday, but I imagine that's probably because I think she's going off to New Zealand in like 4 days' time. So, I mean, we have spent a lot of time on this show, and I know a lot of other people in and around Sri Lankan cricket have spent a lot of time willing international or franchise teams around the world to sign up Chamri and our other women's players. But it's not great if they're not there to play in the major tournaments. And the WPL, let's be honest about it, with the amount of money that's coming into it, like its male counterpart in the IPL, it's the kind of, as it says, it's the premier tournament in the world. We want our best players playing in this tournament. Nick, have SLC let Chamri down by scheduling this tour at this time?
Look, I think I've got sympathy with SLC here, because I think realistically Chamri is the only Sri Lankan player who's in contention to be in the WPL at the moment, right? And you can't base your scheduling around one player. But I do wonder whether there were conversations behind closed doors about Chamri's availability for this tour. Look, she's 35. Her shelf life is not that long, right? How many more editions of WPL can we expect her to play? Would there have been logic and merit in saying you play the WPL and will use this as a chance to, blood someone else, because Sri Lanka do have to start looking towards a post-Chamari future. I mean, I know they want to keep taking scalps, and I think actually this series against New Zealand is a really good opportunity for them. We saw how well they performed away in South Africa, away in England, and I know New Zealand are world champions, but I do think that Sri Lanka can cause them problems. I think they're, as some of the other women's sides can be a bit top heavy, where if you get those few crucial players at the top, there's potentially an opportunity to crack open that middle order. So it's a complicated situation, but yeah, I personally probably fall on the side of, I would have seen the benefit in letting Chamari play the WPO if that's what she wanted to do, and giving someone else an opportunity to get a run of games in her place.
Aadhil, where do you stand on this?
Yep. I mean, same. I also agree with Nick. I mean, yes, we have already qualified for the Women's World Cup. So this tour, I think, could have been used in a better way, probably by allowing somebody to continue playing in the WPL, maybe try out a new captain, because most people would suggest Harshita as the successor, but we've not seen her leading the team yet. We don't know if she is capable of doing that, and how will that affect her batting, because currently by far she is the second best batter. Probably Vishmi comes closer, but we don't know how well she'll continue her batting when she gets an added responsibility like captaining the team. So yeah, we could have definitely used this tour to test those things. A successor for Chamari, batting replacement, skipper, probably test Harshita with some leadership responsibilities. But yeah, I think this is not the first chance that we had to try that out as well, if I'm not mistaken. If I remember right,
Chamari didn't go to Ireland, and that's when all the problems started. And
yeah,
I wonder if this is
that,
a let's try and get back on track tour.
Yeah, so yeah, maybe, and we don't know. They might have they might be having plans as well, which we don't know or not yet communicated to the public. So let's wait and see.
I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, the men. I don't think there's a men's tour, senior tour scheduled to like June now or something, right? We've got ages before they play. What are we going to talk about, Merlian? We're going to need some more crazy stuff to happen in domestic cricket for us to talk about, because we're going to be with you every Monday at this time, 9:00 Sri Lanka time, for you guys to come on board, send us your questions, such as the sports marketeers just messaged saying any parachute payments in Sri Lankan cricket. I think there actually isn't there, Aadhil? If you get relegated, I think that's not the end of the road. I think SLC will come and kind of bail you out financially if you need it.
I don't think SSC needs that. Anyway, not sure about that. I'm not sure about that, to be honest. I think it's still. For a fact, I know even the teams who are playing Governors Trophy, so that's effectively like the fourth tier, right? Even those clubs are getting funded from SLC. So whenever they have a tournament, for the tournament they get funds to pay for the players. They get funds. So I'm pretty sure even tier B clubs where now SSC will be playing will be funded. Probably not as much as they would have got when they were playing the Premier tournament, but still, I think it is there. And as I said, SSC have enough sponsors.
So yeah,
I'll put this. Go on, Nick.
So yeah, just like building on that question for you, Aadhil, like obviously SSC have a lot of revenue streams. It's a really successful, affluent members clubs. So are they reliant on the payments they get from SLC as a first class, like as a reward for playing first class cricket? I mean, they've got a lot of players, a lot of big name players on their roster. Are they going to struggle at all to pay this wage bill to keep the lights on, as it were, or is it the money that they make from test matches, from membership fees, from renting offices to SLC, like easily sufficient to cover their wage bill?
I'm honestly not sure, Nick. So I think it's better not to comment on that, because I'm not very aware of the entire payment thing there. Especially SSC, I'm not aware. So I think it's better. Yeah.
I've got one more related question. How much would a non-international, so a player who hasn't played for Sri Lanka, how much would they earn roughly in Sri Lankan domestic cricket in the top tier?
How much they would earn?
Yeah.
Yeah. Again. I'm not sure about the exact numbers, so I would not risk myself of giving a ballpark. So, and I don't want to say it out live as well. So I'm not pretty aware of it. So maybe
Fair,
will definitely have a professional cricketer involved, or a former cricketer. Probably professional cricketers are not allowed to talk about those on air. Maybe if we can have a recently retired cricketer, if we can have Dimut Karnar, I think that would be great.
That would be great. Dimith is more than welcome to come on the show anytime he wants. He's the quiet man of Sri Lankan cricket, though. I don't think he wants to come and listen to me chew his ear off and ask him very specific questions about about his career, I'd imagine. But we'd love to have him on, Aadhil, or if you got him on your show, that'd be great as well, right?
Yeah.
So, guys, we've kind of transitioned to the kind of questioning part of this of the show. If you're watching at home or on the tube or wherever you are, do send your questions in the comments and we'll get to them. We did throw out yesterday for questions, and let's kind of go through them all today. We got quite a few questions about Charmery that I think we've already kind of answered. And Mark Williams did ask if Chimodi Praboda should be taken to New Zealand. It kind of almost he sent that question in yesterday. It's a kind of moot question because the selectors have decided that she shouldn't be taken. Yeah. I do think that sometimes when we watch, particularly with the women's side, when the youth teams are doing well, it makes us think that we should kind of take these girls in upper level. But there is quite a gap between under 19s cricket and full senior cricket. I mean, most of the players that they were playing against, apart from maybe that India game and some of the girls they played against Australia, will not be women that end up playing professional cricket, right? And they're going to go to New Zealand and they're going to play. They might, I know Sophie Devine is missing from the New Zealand squad, but they're going to be playing professional cricketers. And the gap between that is massive, isn't it, Nick?
Yeah, totally. I mean, we saw it with Vishmi, didn't we? Where it took her quite a while for that clear talent to translate to adults cricket. And I think the last thing you want is Chimodi Praboda at 15 on top of the world right now, goes to New Zealand, gets carted for 40 and 4 overs and suddenly feels not particularly good about herself. So, yeah, I think, look, ultimately the selectors know a lot better than us. And I think with 15, 16-year-old cricketers exercising a bit of caution, a bit of restraint, a bit of hold your horses is never the worst thing.
We got this question that's come in. It came in via Twitter and I've put it into the comments. Samani wrote, why SLC can't focus on organising multi-day tournaments for women's cricket, at least at domestic level for a start, like Bangladesh did last year. It is fair that SLC can't directly step into a range of fixture directly with cost, but starting from domestic level be a good approach. So I've got lots of thoughts on this. My main thought about it, though, is I think we are looking at it the wrong way round, and that actually Test cricket for men, from a Sri Lanka perspective, is barely a thing. I mean, if it like, I know Sri Lanka have had kind of recent success in it, but if it wasn't for that World Test Championship being organised by the ICC, I mean, Sri Lanka are almost never playing Test cricket, right? They're playing 4 tests this year. The women have only ever played 1 test ever. There's barely any Test cricket for women, though I know that is kind of changing. I think the reality is that you're more likely to see a situation where the men play no Test cricket ever. It wouldn't surprise me if Doctor Who arrived in my front room with the TARDIS and told me, Mark, I've seen the future, and in 10 years' time, Sri Lanka just do not play Test cricket. I'd say that's more likely than Sri Lanka women getting a Test match. at this point. I don't think that's for want of Sri Lanka not wanting to provide Test cricket for the women. I just think no one wants to come and play with us for financial reasons. It's not a slight on us. They're not saying that, you know, that there's anything wrong with our cricket culture or anything like that. I think the finances of it just don't work. And unless there's a big reshuffle in the way cricket works, I just cannot see a situation where that changes anytime soon. When Sri Lanka were in South Africa, the back end of last year, what was that, October, November, and there was a situation where there was like 5 teams could get into the World Test Championship final. I thought, this is it. This is the moment where Test cricket kind of takes off again. But for definitely 2 of the big 3 in England and Australia, the reaction was very much, we've got to find a way to stop this. We've got to find a way to make sure that it's always kind of 2 of the big 3 in the final, right? And then you listen to Ben Stokes, who doesn't even take it seriously at all, and you're like, this format's dead. There's no way back from it. I'll get off my podium now, and I'll open the floor to Nick and Aadhil and see if you guys have any more thoughts on this.
No, I agree with you largely, Marky. I think that the reality is that there's very little Test cricket played in women's cricket, right? Aside from the odd Ashes Test, and I don't have an issue with SLC promoting or prioritizing white ball cricket. I guess the one kind of rejoinder maybe that I would say is that you see from men's cricket that players do build skills through red ball cricket which aren't necessarily achievable through a pure diet of white ball cricket. So whether they were to introduce something like a provincial tournament that has the best, 4 teams worth 45, 50 girls, women playing, a few 3-day games against each other every season, I think that might be helpful from a skills building point of view. But I think, it has to be seen as feeding into the white ball setup rather than a quest for women's Test cricket in Sri Lanka.
Yep. I mean, I was about to say what Nick said towards the latter part. If at all they are to consider multi-day cricket domestic cricket for women in Sri Lanka, I think that would be from a purely skills development point of view. Because like Nick said, there are certain skills in the game where you can only improve by playing the long format of the game. Probably the endurance or the stamina to play long innings, stay try and block a ball, things like that. Yes, they are not necessarily the skills you would need in limited overs cricket, but still those play a huge part in bringing those foundations or the initial foundational skills, I would say. I think in a recent show, Ravichandran Ashwin spoke very beautifully about this, how important it is for a cricketer who is aspiring to be a professional cricketer, play first-class cricket or multi-day cricket in his initial stages to develop certain skills. So I think from that point of view, yes, maybe, but I would also agree with what Mark said, because doesn't make sense. If you're not playing Test cricket, doesn't make sense to invest on multi-day domestic cricket.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there is a kind of argument that they should just do it because it's a good thing to do, and that you should kind of offer it up to the women as well. I think that sadly, this doesn't reflect my views on it. I think Sri Lanka have to play with the current, right? They can't create the culture. The one thing I will add to this though is, I for my money, I think Sri Lanka is the most cricket place in the world. And if every other country in the world stopped playing cricket, I think there'd still be people would still play cricket in Sri Lanka, and the big matches around the country would still go on, and
Definitely.
It would still be the biggest thing on the island. So yeah, maybe I'm looking at it from the wrong way, but I think if people aren't going to come play multi-day cricket with us, there's no point in us investing in it, sadly. Got this question came in from Ara on Twitter. Were you guys a bit harsh on DDS's captaincy last week From Andrew to Dimmoth and even Sanga, they were all defensive captains who were not greatly creative. Why did we not produce dynamic, risk-taking captains? If you missed our show last week, you can go back and watch it if you want, or listen to it. But we were a little bit critical on DDS, and we were kind of suggesting that maybe he was a bit too passive in the when we were fielding, and could have been a little bit more aggressive getting his wickets. Nick, I'll put the question back on the screen, and I'll let you kind of answer it and tell us what your thoughts are on this.
Well, yeah, I wasn't here last week. I was down with really nasty flu, so I missed the show. So I'm actually not familiar with the specifics of the criticism, but I would be inclined to say that they were likely well-founded. I think we've seen quite a pretty large sample size now, right? 2 tests in Bangladesh, 3 in England, 2 against New Zealand, 2 in South Africa, and now 2 against Australia. That DDS seems to be lacking a plan B, that when the going isn't going, his sort of instinct tends to be to just plug Prabha from one end and not do a lot. I think to kind of counter Ara's point about Sri Lanka producing generally defensive captains, I think Mahela was a very proactive captain, and I think Arjuna was also that kind of front foot leader who looked to try things, who was capable of buying wickets when they didn't necessarily present themselves. So I think that there are kind of that not all Sri Lankan captains have been in that kind of risk averse, wait for something to happen mold, although that has been the case with some of Sri Lanka's leaders. Yeah, I think obviously, it's incredibly difficult because Dhananjaya de Silva has more experience captaining an international team than 99% of the people who are digging him out about doing it wrong. And it's very easy to captain from your armchair or from your sofa. But the reality is, when you're faced with Steve Smith on 75 not out, and, some bloke who's never played professional cricket telling you to buy a wicket, it's not quite as simple as that. I would like, do you know what I mean? I would like to see them try more stuff. But I think we have to be a little bit careful when we're getting our knives out from our sofas.
Aadhil, what's your take on DDS's captaincy?
I mean, I don't want to be harsh on him. It's just this series. I think this series and the series in South Africa probably that we didn't see his best. But until that, he has been super aggressive. And I'm a bit surprised to see him agreeing to whoever suggested to play 3 spinners against Australia, because even if you look at the series against New Zealand, we did play 2 fast bowlers, right? If I'm not mistaken, we played Milan Ratnayak at 7 in the second test, and even in the first test, we did go with 2 spinners and 2 fast bowlers. So up until that, DDS has been very clear about his plans. Even in Sri Lanka, we'll play with 2 fast bowlers, and against Afghanistan, he played 3 fast bowlers at SSC. So I'm a bit surprised to see him going back to Sri Lanka's usual way, because I thought he was, clear that he'll play with fast bowlers. Probably that's the only time he failed in home as well. So I just want, maybe if anyone influenced his style of captaincy, I don't know if it happened. If someone had influenced and made him to change his decisions, I would just want DDS to go back to his way. I think he started so brilliantly, impressed a lot, and if he believes that there is a way that will win games time, I think he should stick to his way of playing Test cricket. I mean, because every captain has their own style, right? I just want them to stick to it and back it.
It's not for today, but I think at some point we might have to have a discussion about whether or not they need to split the red ball and white ball setups a little bit more, have different coaches, and we've got different they're largely two different squads at the moment. So maybe we need a different coaching setup as well.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
people spend a little bit more time thinking about the Red Bull team. But then we've only got 2 more games left for the rest of the year, so in some ways maybe it's a waste of money. My follow-up question to this whole thing was basically being asked by Dineth here. On a slightly unrelated note, I've started to wonder if the difference in Sri Lanka and DDS's success as captains is that the former actually performs quite well with the bat. I mentioned when we did our emergency show after the brand wash on Friday that Sri Lanka reminds me a little bit of Arjuna. Nick, you're Sri Lanka's kind of premier cricket historian. What would you dare to draw a comparison between Sri Lanka and Ranatunga?
I think Charath's a little more mild-mannered than Arjuna was, but I can see where the comparison comes. I think there is a certain there's something in Sri Lanka's body language that isn't unreminiscent of Arjuna. Look, I think clearly it's a chicken and egg question, isn't it? Like, does your captaincy help because you're batting? Is it which way round does it work? Do you know what I mean? But Charath had a fantastic series with the bat, and I think that imbued him with confidence, and everything was going right for the ODI team in that 2-match series against Australia in a way where nothing seemed to be going for Sri Lanka in the tests. It has been, I think it's been a slightly lean run for DDS with the bat, hasn't it? There was the 100 that he scored in Bangladesh, and then he scored runs in the first innings of Old Trafford, a really important 80, if you think back to our first grade A just a marquee. And I don't think he's scored an awful lot of runs since then. So I think probably a big score would really help him out. And I think, I don't know how much he's captained in first-class cricket, but I think he's got a lot of time to, I guess, just thinking about things. I think Mahela would be probably a really good person to talk to. When I spoke to Mahela about captaincy, he said, like, my go-to was always try something, that for everyone to bring ideas at me, and if it's a good idea, even if it's a shit idea, if nothing's happening, let's try it. And I have just felt that actually at several stages since DDS has taken over, I've been left feeling that, watching, like, just try something. I think they have done good things in stages, like the plans that they had for Harry Brook during that England series, where they were, they're going to go short to him straight away, or they were going to go wide to him and try and tempt him into chasing a ball with 2 men fielding in the covers. Like, I think they've done some good things, but I think there is room for just more, a bit more invention, a bit more nimble thinking. And I'd like to see DDS try too much rather than try too little.
Aadhil, is it only a matter of time before Charath takes over the the Red Bull captaincy as well?
I think first he needs to find a place for himself in the playing 11 of the Red Ball team. And I think that also won't take much long, because according to what I'm seeing on Twitter by certain journalists and what I'm hearing, it's just a matter of time before Charitha Sri Lanka gets another go in Test cricket. And if he clicks well, and if he finds solid place, why not? Yeah, he could be Sri Lanka's next Test captain as well.
We are probably going to wrap this up very shortly. So if you're watching and you've got any questions about the Sri Lanka cricket team or cricket in Sri Lanka, get your questions in now, and we'll try and do our best to answer them. Sanjit asked this about the women's tour to New Zealand. Should team focus on results more in this series, or take it just as more importantly preparation before the ODI World Cup? I mean, many people would say the best preparation would be winning the series, right, Nick?
Yeah, I think I was just having that same thought, Marky. My instinct is to say that they should be focused on long-term prep, but I think you've seen that with this team, the confidence that they've built by winning games, and as you touched on earlier in the piece, Marky, when they had that bad tour in Ireland, it seemed to kind of bleed into the T20 World Cup. So yeah, if they can win some games here, I think that would be fantastic, and it would be great preparation for the World Cup. I think above all, we'd like to see batters scoring runs, right? Not just a Chamari 100, but if we can get Vishmi, Harshita, and the lower middle order in the runs, then I think confidence will flow, and that will be a really, really good stepping stone.
Absolutely, and we'll be with them here at the Murley End every kind of step of the way. I can't wait to wake up to watch ODI matches in New Zealand again. I mean, I really don't like sleeping anyway. Guys, thanks for watching us. Thanks for listening to us. Please do subscribe to us across social media. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube if you're watching. Hit the follow button on your podcast app. We are the Murley End. We talk about everything to do with the Sri Lankan cricket. Today, you have been listening to Nick Brooks, myself, Mark Machado, and our special guest, Aadhil Siddhique. Aadhil runs his own channel, Crick Stick SL, which is well worth a follow. It takes really deep dives into what's going on domestically in Sri Lankan cricket. So if you want to find out who the next test stars are going to be for Sri Lanka, or if you want to find out who the IPLs are going to splash out a huge amount of money on in the next auction, then follow that channel and be ahead of the curve on it all, guys. We are the Murley End. Thank you for watching. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. Bye.
Thank you. See you guys.
Oh, thank you.